And now just to take a pause, what we like to do to keep from being the sage on the stage with a lot of top-down sharing is to center participants' voices and to center the voices of practitioners in our field in Oregon. So today we are going to hear a little bit from two participants who joined us for season 1, Katie Lynch and Ann Armstrong. We'd love to hear a little bit about your experiences, give you the floor for 5 to 10 minutes so that those folks who haven't been with us on the first half of this journey can hear a little bit how that went for you and make it a little bit more tangible. So Katie, would you like to go first?
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. Name is Katie Lynch. She, her pronouns, and coming from Eugene, on Calcoya lands. And I think my feedback, or my reflection on this is that I teach university undergraduate students about environmental education, and then they go out and do environmental education in the spring. And so I'm kind of like behind the scenes setting up projects with community partners, with nonprofits, with governmental agencies to run the environmental ed. So evaluation piece is complex because it's happening in multiple places, but all within the same bubble. And so, like I mentioned earlier, Libby, when you had us do the icebreaker, the wonderful thing for me about the first season was that I've been teaching this class for many years now, and things kind of get in a rinse and repeat. And when you're working on other things, you don't necessarily have time to give everything to keep everything up to date. So for me, it was really great to have a chance to polish up the evaluation section, because there was always a commitment to creating a reflective community. And we do it after every class. We do it after every time the students teach, to try to demystify that reflecting on what worked and what could be improved is just like a great way to embrace life and not like scary and threatening. But it was really great. Deborah was able to come in to my class and provide like a new voice and a new perspective that kind of shook up my traditional linear model, right? And we were able to introduce the cycle. And then the benefit for me is always deepening the equity work, because often, you start in one place and that's where you start, and then it needs time to seep into all parts, or right, to grow, to mature. And so I had been building how equity was centered in our environmental ed work, but I hadn't yet done it in in the little module on evaluation. So it really provided a space to take the work we had been doing and make sure it wasn't just like isolated in weeks 4 and 5, but that it was integrated throughout the whole course. And so student evaluations of my course afterwards really appreciated how we brought up equity and inclusion in throughout the whole term in different aspects, like how it actually operationalizes. Because I don't think I'm struggling to get people on board like with the idea, but like how it shows up has been really useful. So like the really concrete tools that Deborah and then you all provided, and that I'm now going to mine that thing that you just showed, Libby, because I love how it's broken up by sections. So thinking about how I can integrate that even more fully into those sections has been really helpful. I guess the last little thing I was going to say is, now with the Learning in Places program that some of us here are involved with, that's my new tension looking forward, of how that integrates and how evaluation fits in with that framework, and how those two things integrate. And then I guess the other tension that might be useful for new people jumping in, it's and when you're working with different staff and people in different roles in evaluation, is figuring out how much of it is generative, is created by the team. So in my case, by my students, and how much of it I should just hand them to do, right? So like the learning happens by practicing it and doing it, but if you are only have one shot and so I guess like when we're thinking about like our outdoor school staff or our other staff and the ways we interact with environmental ed, like where the work, who does the work to figure out what the evaluation is. I don't know if I'm making myself, if that's helpful, but I think there's a lot of learning that happens by us doing this, by having all of these conversations and by thinking through it and figuring out how it works. And you might not have that time with your staff or like with my students to do this amount of work. And so it is actually kind of that same tension we were just talking with learning in places, right? Like what part do I just distill and hand over? And does that mess with the integrity of it? So I don't know if that is a helpful reflection for everyone, but it participating last term really gave me some new language and some new frameworks that felt more up to date, and the ability to center equity was really helpful. So that was what I had to add.
Thank you. That's really rich. And I think what you're getting at is something that we as a team also struggle with. You know, how much direct content delivery is really valuable or applicable when in fact the learning is happening with the implementation on the ground. And so we're trying to provide like concepts that are helpful, probably the same way you are with your students, and then having to trust that there's an open line of communication back and forth from you all so that we can support the questions that come up as you're implementing. But it's slow work. It's not fast work that can be spit out in a quick university quarter. You know, it's slow work, and that's what we acknowledge from the feedback that we received at the end of the last season as well. It takes time to build those relationships and to implement and to really implement things that are just concepts, and to take those concepts and make them actual. Thank you so much, Katie. And did you, Anne Armstrong, would you like to share anything about season 1?
Hi, I'm Anne. I think a lot of what I reflect on, is similar themes to kind of what Katie was talking about too. For context, I run an outdoor school program. I have a seasonal staff. They start with me in March and then they end in November. And so my 2024 program staff just left, and I was kind of thinking about like what type of end of season evaluation I might want to engage with them. And the first season had a lot of those questions of like, what type of evaluation questions are you asking, and why are you collecting that data, and what are you looking for? And so I had kind of changed a lot of thoughts that I was like, do you just ask questions because people expect questions? And is that actually something that is going to benefit me, or am I trying to prompt them into being self-reflective and mindful in a way that like is seemingly out of the blue and may not be a skill set that they have, which I was kind of running into a little bit. So I also happened to like pull up this folder of all of these other seasons of like, how did your season go? And I just have just like pages and pages of these. And I was reading through them when I was looking at what I ended up sending out this past year. And one thing that I noticed was just that like the seasonal staff kind of get on these tracks, these ruts, and they kind of have these gripes, and they kind of just like seem to like repeat each other's answers in a lot of different ways about whatever they're feeling. And so I think that really speaks to the notion of like how evaluation can really benefit from multiple voices and multiple different organizations and community partners coming in. So that really just was something that really stuck out, to go ahead and put that time into, say that like the people who are running the program are valuable for how the program is run, but they're really not the only people that I need to be talking to. And I think some of the other things, again, kind of Katie was talking about, is there's building up of a vocabulary to be able to talk about these practices in meaningful ways with peers like the people on this call, but also, again, kind of in some way just developing that with the staff as well, so that as they are learning their practices about being educators, those are people I can have conversations with about what we're doing here and now. So there is still some sort of staff development that I'm still trying to figure out of that vocabulary. So we have a shared vocabulary as we're talking about things. So those are a couple of things that I think are on my mind coming back from in reviewing the session one material.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Does anyone in our team have any reflections on that? Anything to add?
I'll make some connections when I go to the eval stuff, but I'm gonna pause until then.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm probably just echoing things that have already been said, but this idea that the work is hard and really to do it well is involved, right? So it's more than just grabbing a resource off the internet and using it in a program, right? Like what we're asking ourselves to do is like redefine success and engage other people in doing it, and then ask hard questions about, are we doing extractive practices, or how are we creating evaluations that really are supportive of everyone? And all this to say, what I hear in both of your sharing, Katie and Anne, is this this desire to figure out how to do the hard work when there's like limited time with people, and how do you not cheapen it or even cause harm? How can we be careful about like doing the hard work well when the tendency is to be like, well, can I grab this little piece, right? Or can I grab that little piece? And just to be thoughtful about that. I think I think about that a lot too.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I also feel like as you work through this process, you don't just get one shot at it. You do your best with what you have, and then the whole idea of the circle or the spiral or the eventual progression back through those steps of that process, you might think upon the next go around how it could be made more meaningful, more relevant, less extractive, more participatory, and not have to cheapen it, like you were saying. So those are options and possibilities, and I think we're all wrestling with similar stuff. I'm going to go back to sharing screen, and I'm going to thank our two stories from the field. Thank you so much, Katie and Anne. We hope to do a little bit more of that as we go along. Each session of our workshop will have some participant sharing or colleague sharing, and we love that. That's where the learning is at.